My wife asked me to apologize to her male best friend for making him uncomfortable. That was how this started. Not with a hotel receipt. Not with a late-night confession. Not with some big dramatic moment. Just my wife standing in our kitchen after dinner, telling me I had embarrassed another man by asking him to keep his hands off her. I said okay. She thought that meant I was backing down. It didn't. It meant I was done guessing. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 42. And I work as a senior cloud solutions engineer for a medical IT company in Portland. Most days I deal with system outages, broken rollouts, and people acting calm on calls while everything behind the screen is on fire. It pays well. It's steady. It also means long hours, late nights, on a brain that stays half at work even when I'm home. Lauren used to say that was the part of me she admired, that I was dependable, that I stayed level when other people spun out. Somewhere along the way, dependable turned into predictable. Then predictable turned into easy to dismiss. We'd been married 17 years. 2 kids. Jake was 16. Ava was 14. Good kids. Smart. Funny. Old enough to notice more than adults think they do. Jason Cole had been in our lives for about 6 years. Lauren called him her best friend. He worked in commercial real estate, dressed a little too sharp for backyard cookouts, and always seemed just a little too comfortable in my house. I never liked how familiar he was with her, but I let a lot of it slide because that's what married people do when they're trying not to become suspicious over every little thing. Last weekend, we were at a barbecue at a friend's place. Paper plates, folding chairs, kids in and out of the yard. Nothing special. I had just mentioned I might be up for a promotion. Jason came over smiling like I'd told him I won the lottery. He hugged Lauren first. Not me. Her. His hand sat low on her back longer than it needed to. Not a second too long where you can prove something. Just long enough to leave a mark in your head. I waited until he stepped away from the group. Then I pulled him aside near the fence and kept my voice low. Hey, I said, I'd appreciate a little more space with my wife. That should have been the end of it. Instead, he gave me that half-smile men use when they want to act relaxed and superior at the same time. Come on, man, he said. She talks to me because you're never around. I just looked at him. Then Lauren walked over, caught the tone, and instead of asking what happened, she looked at me like I was the problem. Please don't make this into one of your things, she said. One of my things. I remember that line more than anything else from that afternoon. That night, I got home after a brutal shift, dropped my bag by the kitchen island, and saw Lauren waiting for me with her arms folded. She already had that look on her face. Tight jaw. Decision made. We need to talk, she said. I loosened my tie. About what? Trevor. She stopped herself, then corrected it. Jason called. He's upset about last weekend. I poured myself a glass of water first. Bought a second to think. He had his hand on your lower back. I said, that wasn't friendly. She threw one hand in the air. Oh my God. Here we go. I asked him privately to be respectful. You embarrassed him. I set the glass down. She stepped closer and lowered her voice, like that made it reasonable. I need you to apologize to him. Ethan, fix this. Then she said the part that stayed with me. Jason knows how to be emotionally available. You turn everything into logistics. I stared at her for a second. Not because I didn't hear her, because I did. Then I nodded once. Okay. I said, I'll apologize. The relief on her face was immediate. That told me more than her words did. She thought she'd won something. What she didn't know was that I had already started paying attention. Lauren smiled after I agreed. Not a big smile, just enough to loosen her shoulders. She picked up her tea like the conversation was finished. Like we had handled something mature. People handle all the time. A small disagreement. A social misunderstanding. Something that would disappear if I just did the polite thing and called Jason. I stood there another few seconds with my hand still near the glass. Then I asked, "When do you want me to talk to him?" "This weekend, maybe." She said, "No rush. Just clear the air." Clear the air. That phrase stayed in my head the rest of the night. Jake stayed in his room. Ava was finishing homework at the dining table. The house sounded normal. Cabinet doors. Water running upstairs. A chair moving across the floor. That almost made it worse. Because everything looked like a regular Thursday. And I couldn't stop replaying the barbecue in my head. Jason's hand. His voice near the fence. Lauren saying, "One of your things?" Later that night, we went to bed at the usual time. Lauren fell asleep fast. She always could. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, turning slow above us. I kept thinking about small things I had ignored because they were easy to explain if you wanted peace badly enough. Her phone turning face down more often. Text alerts late at night followed by quick smiles she never explained. A new perfume, A new perfume 6 months ago she said she bought because it was on sale. How often Jason's name came up in normal conversation for someone who was supposedly just a friend. I must have looked at the clock 5 times before I heard her phone buzz. Once, then again, then a third time. Quick. Close together. Lauren moved a little but didn't wake up. I waited. Not because I was trying to be noble. Mostly because I wanted to make sure she stayed asleep. After a few minutes, I reached over and picked up her phone. New passcode. That surprised me more than it should have. The screen lit up bright enough to show message previews before I even opened anything. Jason. Did you talk to him? Jason again. Is he going to apologize? Then one more. I miss you. Hate that we have to be careful. I sat up slowly, holding the phone low near my lap. My chest felt tight, but my hands stayed steady. I opened the message thread. Nothing explicit. No pictures. No obvious confession. But it was there anyway. The tone, the shortcuts in language. The kind of rhythm people only have when they talk all the time. Inside jokes I didn't understand. Comments about days I thought were ordinary. One message from 2 weeks earlier. Wish today lasted longer. Another. He still doesn't notice anything. I read that one twice. Then I started taking screenshots. One after another. I sent them to my own email. I made a new folder and dropped every file into it. Then I checked older messages. More gaps than there should have been. Deleted sections. Missing stretches. That told me enough by itself. I opened her photo gallery next. At first it looked normal. Kids. Work, lunch. Grocery lists. Random pictures of receipts. Then farther back, I found one taken 3 months earlier. Lauren sitting near a hotel window. Holding a wine glass. Soft yellow light behind her. Nothing shocking if you saw it alone. But the caption under it said, "Sometimes you need to feel alive again." I checked the file details. Seattle. Same weekend, she told me she had a solo work conference. I remembered because Ava had asked why Mom got room service pictures when Dad never did. At the time, Lauren laughed and said conference hotels always look nicer than they really are. I opened Jason's public social media. Scrolled back. There he was that same weekend. Smiling outside a waterfront restaurant in Seattle. Different post. Same date. In the window behind him, there was a reflection. A woman sitting across from him. Not clear enough for proof. Clear enough for me. I downloaded both. Then I checked our joint account from my phone. That took longer because now I was looking for patterns. Cash withdrawals. 200 here. 300 there. Always on days Lauren said she was out with friends or shopping after work. A hotel charge in Boston. Another in San Diego. Not huge amounts alone. Enough together to stop being random. By the time I put her phone back exactly where it had been, it was close to 4 in the morning. Lauren turned slightly and reached one hand across the bed without opening her eyes. Her fingers touched the blanket near my arm, then pulled back. I stayed awake until morning. Not angry yet. Just clear. Because once you stop arguing with yourself, everything starts lining up faster than you want it to. By morning, I already knew 2 things. First, I wasn't imagining anything anymore. Second, I still didn't know how far it went. Lauren got up before me. Same as usual. I heard the bathroom door shut. Then the shower start. Water against tile. Cabinet opening once. Nothing rushed. I stayed in bed until I heard the second sound I was waiting for. The drawer where she kept her makeup case. That usually gave me a few minutes. I got up, pulled on yesterday's jeans, and walked to the home office. Her laptop sat on the desk where she always left it. Half closed. Charger, plugged in. No password. That used to feel like trust. Now it just felt careless. I opened it and went straight to her email. At first it looked ordinary. Work messages. Calendar reminders. A coupon from a clothing store she liked. A school email about Ava's parent meeting next month. Then I found a folder called Travel Plans. That was enough to make me stop breathing for a second. Inside were hotel confirmations I had never seen before. Boston. San Diego. Seattle. Different weekends. Different months. Every booking had 2 guests. Every room had 1 king bed. One of them included champagne service added before arrival. I opened each one and photographed the screen with my phone instead of forwarding anything. Less chance of leaving a trace. The Boston reservation matched a week. Lauren told me she had stayed overnight because a client dinner ran late. I remembered that one because Jake had asked why Mom missed his game, and she promised she'd make the next one. She didn't make the next one either. I kept going. Some bookings were under her name. Some were under initials only, but the billing address matched ours every time. Then I checked cloud storage because she kept everything connected across devices and never really cleaned old folders. That took longer. Most of it was junk. Screenshots. Work presentations. Family photos from years ago. Then I found a folder buried under old backups. Backup 2023. Inside was a document called Notes. Plain title. Nothing smart about it. I opened it. The first line looked harmless until I read the date beside it. March 15th. Told Ethan I had a client dinner. Jason met me downtown. He makes me feel young again. I stared at that one longer than I expected. Then, the next entry. Another trip excuse worked. This is getting easier. Another. Jason says he loves me. I think I love him too. Short entries. No long paragraphs. Just enough to remove every last place where doubt could hide. One line near the middle stayed with me because of how ordinary it sounded. He never checks anything. That line did more damage than the others. Not because it was cruel. Because it was true. I had trusted routine for years. Bills got paid. Kids got where they needed to go. Lauren came home every night. Most marriages start leaning on routine without noticing. I heard the shower stop upstairs. I took quick photos of every page. No scrolling back for a second look. No reading extra. Just enough to preserve what mattered. Then I closed the document, shut the laptop, and put it back exactly where it had been. charger in the same angle. Lid half closed. By the time Lauren came downstairs, coffee was already running. She looked fresh, hair tied back, work clothes pressed. Like nothing had shifted. "You're up early," she said. "Didn't sleep much." She poured coffee into her mug and leaned one hip against the counter. Still thinking about Jason. I looked at her over the machine. "Yeah." That answer made her smile again. "A small one. I told you. It'll be easier once you two talk." I handed her the mug. "When should I reach out? This weekend, maybe? Saturday afternoon works. They're usually home." They, meaning Jason and Megan. That detail landed harder now than it had the night before. She drank her coffee and checked her phone while standing there, probably making sure no message looked dangerous. Then she kissed my cheek before leaving. "Quick, light, automatic. Thank you. Ethan." "Really?" Her heels crossed the hardwood toward the front door. A few seconds later, I heard her car start outside. I stood alone in the kitchen, holding my own coffee. Then I went back to the table, opened my laptop, and started searching something I had never thought I'd need to check. Jason's business records. Because by then, I had enough to know this wasn't just personal anymore. And when something runs that long, money usually leaves a trail too. Jason's company took less than 10 minutes to find. Commercial filings are public if you know where to look and you have enough patience to read past the first page. His name showed up exactly where I expected. Vice President of Operations at a mid-sized development company, doing better than someone in his position should have been doing. What caught my attention was not his title. It was one of the investor names. A holding company tied back to an account I knew very well. Mine. Not directly under my name, but through an investment structure Daniel Mercer had set up years ago when my parents left me money and told me not to talk about it unless I had to. I sat back and read it twice. Jason had been taking my wife on trips, partly funded by returns coming through money I didn't even think about most months. That would matter later. But before money, I still needed to know what my own house had already seen without me. Saturday afternoon gave me that chance. Jake had taken the car to meet friends. Lauren went to the gym, which had become her regular Saturday habit about 6 months earlier. New leggings. New bag. 90 minutes gone every time. Ava was on the couch with her laptop. Headphones in. Knees tucked under a blanket, even though it wasn't cold. I sat in the chair across from her. She pulled one earbud out. "What? Can I ask you something?" That got her attention right away. She closed the laptop halfway. "Sure." I kept my voice even, because kids hear panic before adults do. "Have you noticed anything different with Mom lately?" She didn't answer right away. Just looked at me the way teenagers do when they're deciding how dangerous honesty might be. "What do you mean?" "Just different. Distracted maybe. Secretive." Her fingers moved against the edge of the laptop. Then she looked down. That told me enough before she even spoke. "Dad," she said quietly. I wasn't going to say anything. I waited. "Last month, when you were in Seattle, I came home early because I forgot my charger at Emma's house." I said nothing. There was a car outside I didn't know. My hands stayed still on the armrest. When I came in, Mom and Jason were in the kitchen. She swallowed once. They were standing really close. Like, too close. "Did they see you?" "Yeah." "What happened?" "They moved apart fast." That part, she said, almost in one breath. Like she had replayed it before. "Mom said he stopped by to talk about work." I nodded once. Ava looked at me now. Eyes wet, but trying hard not to cry. "She asked me not to tell you because she said you'd take it wrong." That line landed harder than I expected. Not because it surprised me, because she had involved our daughter in carrying it. I got up, moved to the couch, and sat beside her. You did the right thing telling me. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Kids always ask the clean version first. We're dealing with something. I said, but none of this is your fault. She nodded, but I could tell she had more. I waited again. Then she said, sometimes packages come when you're at work. Mom tells me to bring them in before you get home. What kind of packages? I don't know. Boxes mostly. Where does she keep them? In her closet? Back corner. That was enough. Lauren still had 40 minutes before she usually came back from the gym. I went upstairs. Our bedroom looked exactly like it always did. Bed made. Curtains half open. Her side table clean except for lotion and her charger. I opened the closet. Winter coats in the back, even though the weather had already turned warm. Behind them were 3 boxes stacked low against the wall. Plain cardboard. Inside the first one were men's shirts, still folded with tags attached. Not my size. The second box had a leather jacket and a bottle of cologne I had never seen before. Expensive brand. Still sealed. The third box had paperwork under tissue paper. A clinic receipt clipped to a medical form. Procedure date, 8 months earlier. Her name. A termination appointment. I read the page once. Then, the line below it. Emergency contact. Jason Cole. I sat on the edge of the bed for a second with the paper in my hand. 3 years earlier, Lauren had driven me home after my vasectomy. We had agreed together. 2 kids were enough. Life already moved fast enough. I photographed every page. Every signature. Every date. Then, I put everything back exactly where it had been. Box corners lined up. Coats covering them again. When I came downstairs, Ava was still on the couch pretending to read something on the screen. I checked the time. Then, I sent Jason one message. I'd like to come by tomorrow afternoon. Talk to you and Megan together. The reply took less than a minute. Sure. Come by around 2. He still thought this was about an apology. That worked for me. Sunday came slower than I expected. Not because I changed my mind. Because once you know exactly what you're about to do, time starts stretching in strange places. Coffee takes longer. Traffic lights feel longer. Even putting papers into a folder takes longer because you check each page twice, even when you already know what's there. I used a plain manila folder. Nothing dramatic. Just clean copies. Text screenshots. Hotel bookings. Bank withdrawals. The clinic paperwork. A printout from Jason's company filings with my investment connection highlighted. I left the originals at home. Lauren asked that morning if I still planned to go. She was standing near the sink, tying her hair back, acting casual in a way that looked practiced now. You still meeting Jason today? Yeah. She nodded like that, settled something for her. Good. That was all she said. No concern. No curiosity about why I asked to meet at his place instead of somewhere neutral. Just confidence. I drove over at 2:15. Jason lived in one of those suburban split-level houses, built to look more expensive than they were. Trim lawn. Clean driveway. 2 cars. Quiet street. The kind of place where neighbors wave but still notice who parks where. I sat in my car a few seconds before getting out. Folder on the passenger seat? Then I walked up. Jason opened the door before I knocked. Already smiling. Ethan. Come on in. Man. He held out his hand. I shook it once. Inside smelled like coffee and laundry detergent. Megan was already in the living room, sitting on the couch in a gray cardigan, legs tucked under her. Polite smile that looked tired around the eyes. Hi. Ethan. She said. Thanks for being here. That line made Jason glance at me. He probably noticed the folder then. I sat in the chair across from them and laid it on the coffee table without opening it yet. Jason leaned back like he expected something awkward but manageable. Look, man, he said. Last weekend got weird. But honestly, no hard feelings. I looked at him. I'm here because Lauren wanted me to apologize. Megan's eyes moved once between us. Jason gave a short laugh. Seriously. It's fine. I opened the folder. Yeah. I said. I figured if I was going to do it, I should do it properly. That was the moment the room changed. Not dramatic. Just quiet. I took out the first page and laid it flat on the table facing them. A screenshot of messages. Midnight timestamps. Jason leaned forward before he could stop himself. Megan looked down and read the first line out loud under her breath. I miss you. Hate that we have to be careful. No one spoke for a second. Then Jason said, Ethan. Listen. I raised one hand. Not yet. Second paper. Seattle hotel booking. 2 guests. King bed. Champagne service. Lauren told me she was alone that weekend. I said. Megan picked it up this time. Her fingers held the edge too tight. Jason sat forward now. Elbows on knees. This isn't what you think. I took out the third sheet. Bank withdrawals from our joint account. Dates lined up beside trip weekends. 200 here. 300 there. Small enough not to stand out unless someone starts reading. Jason looked at the papers. Then, at me. You went through her account. Our account? That landed. Then I placed the company filing down. This one I slid directly toward him. Ashford Development Holdings. He saw his own company name and stopped talking. My investment group holds part of the capital behind your board. For the first time since I walked in, his face lost color. Megan looked from him to me. What does that mean? It means some of the money helping keep his company standing came from mine. Jason stood up too fast. Okay. Enough. I stayed seated. No. One more. I took out the clinic paperwork and handed it directly to Megan. This time I didn't explain right away. She read in silence. Date first. Procedure line second. Then the emergency contact. Her face changed there. Not loudly. Just her mouth tightening before she looked at Jason like she no longer recognized where she was sitting. He stepped toward her. Megan? She pulled the paper closer to herself and leaned away from him. Then I said the only line that mattered. I had a vasectomy 3 years ago. That left nowhere for anyone to hide. Megan stood slowly and walked out of the room without saying a word. We heard her steps on the stairs. Jason stayed where he was. Hands open. No words ready. Finally he asked, What do you want? I closed the folder. I came to apologize. He looked at me. I'm sorry I let you around my house this long. I'm sorry I trusted what I was looking at instead of what was actually happening. Then I stood. Tomorrow morning, your board gets everything. At the door I stopped once. Oh. And Jason. He didn't answer. Lauren thinks this meeting fixed things. Then I left him standing there with the papers still on his table. The drive home felt shorter than the drive there. Not because traffic changed. Because once the folder had been opened and left behind on Jason's coffee table, there was nothing left to rehearse. I already knew what Lauren would ask first. She cared about whether I had repaired the surface, before she cared about what sat under it. Her car was in the driveway when I got back. I stayed in mine a few extra seconds with both hands on the wheel. Then I went inside. She was in the kitchen, wearing yoga pants and one of my old college shirts. Kettle still warm on the stove. A mug already on the counter. Tea bag string hanging over the side. She turned when she heard the door. The smile came fast. Too fast. How'd it go? I put my keys down near the bowl by the wall. Fine. That answer relaxed her immediately. I told you, she said, reaching for the kettle. You two just needed an actual conversation. She poured water into the mug. Steam rose between us. I leaned one hand against the counter. I talked to Megan too. The kettle stopped halfway back to the stove. Lauren looked up. What? I thought it made sense if she heard it too. Now the smile was gone. Why would Megan be there? I brought documents. That word changed her face before I even listed them. What documents? Hotel bookings. Text message. Bank withdrawals. The mug slipped out of her hand. It hit the tile hard and broke into 3 pieces. Tea spread across the floor and reached the edge of the cabinet. Lauren didn't move. For a second, she just stared down at it. Then back at me. Ethan. Clinic paperwork too. She gripped the counter. The color left her face slowly. Not all at once. I kept my voice low because there was no reason not to. Seattle. Boston. San Diego. Cash taken from our account. Gifts in your closet. Jason listed as emergency contact. It's not what you think. That line sounded weaker than it had probably sounded in her head. I asked the only thing worth asking. Which part? She opened her mouth, then stopped. I can explain. I nodded once. I know. That confused her for half a second. Then I said it clearly. I already filed. For what? Divorce. She stared like she needed another word after it. There'll be papers tomorrow. Her breathing changed. Fast now. You went through my things. You asked our daughter to help hide them. That landed harder than anything else so far. Her shoulders moved back a little. She told you. She told me enough. Lauren pressed both palms against the counter and looked toward the stairs, like she already knew where the next damage would come from. You talked to Ava. I didn't have to push. Now she looked scared in a way I hadn't seen before, because this was the first moment she understood the story had moved outside her control. You can't take my kids. Our kids? I straightened. I'm taking them tonight. No. That came out fast. You don't get to decide that alone. I already did. She stepped around the broken mug but didn't come close enough to touch me. Ethan. Please. I turned toward the stairs. Behind me, she said my name again. Louder this time. I didn't stop. Jake was at his desk when I opened his door. He looked up once and took one earbud out. Pack a bag. He watched my face before asking anything. For how long? Tonight first. Maybe longer. He nodded once like he had already been expecting some version of this. Then he stood and opened a drawer. No panic. No questions yet. Just folded shirts. That steadiness almost broke something in me, more than tears would have. In Ava's room, she was already crying before I finished the sentence. Not loud. Just wiping one side of her face while pulling clothes into a backpack too fast and missing the zipper the first time. Is Mom staying here? Yeah. Are we coming back? Yes. That answer mattered more than the others. Downstairs, Lauren was on the phone by then, walking from one side of the kitchen to the other. Voice low. Too fast to hear every word. Didn't matter who she called. I already knew. When we came down with bags, she stopped talking and looked at Jake first. Then Ava. Neither of them looked at her long. I picked up my keys again. My phone buzzed right then. Unknown number. I checked it before opening the door. Thank you for telling me the truth. I'm sorry too. Megan, I put the phone back in my pocket. Lauren saw the screen light, but not the name. Outside. The evening air felt colder than it had an hour earlier. Behind us, the front door stayed open. Lauren stood there in the doorway, barefoot, one hand against the frame. No one said anything. Then I drove away with both kids in the back seat. That first night, we stayed at a hotel 10 minutes from the house. Nothing special. 2 beds, thin curtains, a vending machine down the hall that gave Jake the wrong soda twice. Ava fell asleep first, with the lamp still on. Jake stayed awake longer, sitting on the edge of the second bed, turning his phone over in his hand. Then he said, "I heard Mom on the phone last week." I looked at him. "With Jason?" He nodded. She was laughing. A second passed. Not like normal. That was enough. At his age, he had already understood more than he wanted to. The next morning, I met Rachel Hayes before work. I handed her one folder. Messages first. Travel records after that. Bank withdrawals. Clinic paperwork. Timeline notes. She read quietly. Then tapped the bank records. "This part helps more than the messages," she said. By noon, the filing had started. Adultery grounds. Custody request. Financial review. That afternoon, I got a call from someone I didn't know. Emily Carter from Lauren's office. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She came with a flash drive and kept both hands around it before sliding it across the table. "I should have said something earlier," she said. Inside were office emails, after-hours access logs, and one audio clip recorded in a break room months before. Lauren's voice came through clear. She was laughing, saying I never checked anything because routine mattered more to me than details. Then another line. "He won't leave. He cares too much about looking stable." Emily looked at me after the clip ended. She said that in front of 2 people, I said nothing, because by then there was nothing left to debate. That same afternoon, Lauren still went to work. Normal clothes. Normal bag. Same heels. By evening, her building badge had stopped working. Emily texted me later. She stood outside the glass door for 5 minutes before security came down. That detail stayed with me because I could see it clearly without being there. Phone in hand. Bag on shoulder. Door not opening. Jason dropped faster. The board met 2 mornings later. No argument lasted long because nobody wanted their own name attached to his. By lunch, his company laptop was collected. His parking access was removed before the day ended. A week later, Daniel Mercer sent one short message. He asked if he could resign quietly and keep partial equity. Board declined. 3 days after that, one of the vendors I knew sent me a photo by accident. Jason at a strip mall office across town. Plastic chair near the front window. His own name printed small on temporary paper taped beside the door. No assistant. No lobby. That looked closer to truth than anything he had shown at barbecues. Lauren's parents called that same week. Susan spoke first. "We know everything." No excuses came after that. Just one clear sentence. "She is not staying here." They asked only about Jake and Ava. I said yes before they finished asking. Kids should not lose every adult because 2 adults failed them. Megan texted 2 days later. "Coffee, if you have time." We met Saturday morning. Same gray sweater. No makeup. She told me then about treatment. Stage 3, ovarian cancer. Jason had started pulling away during those months. Late meetings. Weekend absences. Excuses that now sounded familiar to both of us. We talked longer than planned. Nothing dramatic. When she reached for her cup, her sleeve pulled back enough for me to see the faint mark where hospital tape had been. That stayed with me longer than anything she said. The divorce moved fast once Emily's files entered record. Lauren got supervised visitation every other Sunday, with her parents present. The second visit ended early. Ava came back quiet, then said while taking off her shoes. Mom asked if we still talk about her at dinner. That was all. 2 months later, Lauren lost the apartment she had rented after leaving the house. She moved into a studio above a nail salon on the east side. Jake noticed her old SUV one Sunday, parked behind the building. He looked once through the window and said nothing. 3 months before my wedding, Lauren came to my office without warning. She stood near the door and asked if we could try again. Then she explained what she meant. An open arrangement. She said, "For the kids?" I looked at her, then said no. One word. No anger left by then. Just no. A year after the hotel night, I married Megan in a small chapel downtown. Jake stood straight the whole ceremony. Ava cried before anyone else did. Susan and Mark came too. Quiet. Respectful. No rewriting. Near the end of the reception, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Congratulations on your wedding. I hope you're happy. I'm sorry for everything. I read it once, deleted it, went back inside. Megan was standing near the cake table with Ava. Both of them laughing over something small I didn't hear. That was enough. Because the truth is, the moment Lauren asked me to apologize was the first honest thing she had done in a long time. She thought she was protecting what she built. She was really opening the door that ended it. If you had been in my place, would you have opened that folder in Jason's living room the same way? Or said everything the first night you saw the messages? If this story stayed with you, share your thoughts below. Leave a comment and subscribe to Quiet Family Justice.